Hey everybody, it's Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with Kid Chess. And we're not going to see a lot of moves this video, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of complicated tactics in this position. Now, I like to show games of the world champions. They're not the world champions for nothing. And this is a funny example because I think Petrosian, the player with the white pieces, who was the world champion, probably his two most famous games ever were both games that featured queen sacrifices and where you sacrifice your queen. And probably the last world champion you would think would sacrifice their queen is Petrosian. He was considered a very boring player who had a lot of draws. And even when he won, the games weren't considered very interesting. He would just play better than his opponent. And his opponent would say, why am I losing? What's going on? Okay, that's the way he won. That's the way I like to win, actually. Other world champions like Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer and Mikhail Tal, they had a more exciting way of playing chess. So this is either his most famous or second most famous queen sacrifice. I think this is his most famous. Now, he's playing Samagin, who's a Russian grandmaster, very strong. And they got this really interesting position. To me, positions are interesting when there's a material imbalance. If everything's equal, that's not too exciting. But if I win these pieces and you win those pieces, you're like, who has the advantage? And it depends on who you ask. Now, in this position, both sides have a king, a queen, and two pawns. And otherwise, black has a rook and two pawns, and white has a bishop and a knight. And generally, a rook and two pawns is worth a bishop and a knight, maybe more. Now, on the other hand, it's white's turn to move. So white could immediately take this rook and win a rook for a knight. And according to the computer, if he does do that, then the game should end in a draw. And in fact, I think the game would end in a draw pretty quickly because we could just check him. For example, I take the rook, and then I check you, and I keep checking you. Okay, this perpetual check with the king in the corner, I've actually seen more than once. And to surprise you a little bit, I think even if this bishop was a queen, you still couldn't escape. That's right, there's no escape. And the thing is, there's always a check. No matter what he does, there's always a check. You can't get out, right? No matter how many times you block, I can still check you. Okay, there's no escape from these checks. Okay, so the game is a draw. All right, so after knight takes f7, the game would have been a draw. If you don't play knight takes f7, well, black has an attack on white's king. Black's not down any material. Rook and two pawns is worth at least a bishop and a knight. So it looks like the game's going to end in a draw. Okay, by the way, Petrosian was known for having draws, so all right. Instead, Petrosian played one of the greatest combinations we've ever seen. That's better than drawing. So remember what I told you in previous videos and in future videos. You should always look for checks and captures. Now, obviously, that's a capture of a rook, but it doesn't work because black has all these checks. This is a capture, but that just gives the knight away. This is a capture, but that doesn't work. However, there is a move that's check. Obviously, knight here check just gives the knight away, but there's a very long check, and that check is queen a8 check, the whole board. Okay, now here, black has two reasonable moves, king to e7 and king to g7. All right, king to e7 we beat pretty easily. We just check you again. We can either check you here or check you here. I might as well steal a pawn while I'm at it, and that's a skewer. So I got two pieces on your rook, and you're in check. So now white wins pretty easily. I don't know what to suggest. If you go here, then white's going to be up two pieces. So that's an easy win. And if black plays, I don't know, king f6, let's say, instead of queen d7, then knight e4 check forks the king and queen. Queen takes f7 check wins, and so forth. I guess this wins the easiest. Check, and then we could take this with check, and then we're up two pieces again. Okay, king e7 is not good. King e7 doesn't work. But it does look like king g7 works, and that's what he played. So here, black played king g7. Okay? Again, if white takes this rook, then we have this, these checking moves all coming. Okay, so here, Petrosian played an amazing combination. And remember what I told you? I told you before, I'm going to tell you again. Always look for checks and captures. And the reason is, those moves are forcing. Let me tell you what I mean about forcing moves. Let's say white plays a move that's not a check or not a capture. Like, I don't know, a5. Okay, now black has 20, 25 legal moves. I can't analyze all those moves. I'm a grandmaster and I can't do it. However, if you put your opponent in check or you capture something, then they have to deal with that. Okay, that way you have less to look at, and sometimes you just win. Sometimes check is checkmate. Sometimes taking pieces takes all of your opponent's pieces. So those moves are very important. More important than checking and more important than capturing is doing both. If you can check and capture, that's a move you got to look at. That move could win right away. It might not win, but it could. Okay, and in this position, white played just an awesome move. And I'm going to go back and show you why it's so awesome, because you won't even know why when I show you. You'll see how awesome it is, but I'm going to make it more awesome. Okay, so he played the move that's a check and a capture. I sort of gave it away. Bishop takes e5 check. It attacks the king. It attacks the queen. So black's got to deal with that. Obviously, black has to take or lose his queen. Okay, and now white plays a super amazing move. Okay, it wins all of black's pieces. Okay, and this is, again, I think his most famous queen sacrifice. So pause the video and try to find the winning queen sacrifice for white. There's not too many queen sacrifices, but this one does it. The answer is queen h8 check, skewering the king and queen. So you have to take the queen. If you move your king, I'll take your queen. So you take the queen, and then I fork you, forking the king and queen, and then I take the queen, and white has an extra knight after all of that. White has a knight, black has nothing. So white's winning, and here the game ended, the guy gave up. You shouldn't give up, but when you're playing the world champion and they're ahead a knight for nothing in an endgame, that's tough. Now, that was amazing, that was brilliant, etc., etc. But I want to go back to this position, and I said I would. Remember when white played bishop takes e5 and then sacrificed his queen? I'm going to show you a line that doesn't work, but it looks like it's the same line, but even better. Why can't I just play queen h8 check right away? He takes it. I didn't even give up my bishop in this line. It's the same thing, except white still has his bishop. And this is completely winning for white. The reason Petrosian didn't do that is now black does not have to take the queen. Black can play king g6. And the engine, the chess computer, says this is a draw. There's no way to win now. Okay? And you might say, wait a minute, what's the difference? Why did he take the queen in the actual game, but he didn't take the queen here? The reason is, in this position, after the move that was played in the game, now there's a skewer. He has to take the queen or he loses his own queen. And Petrosian saw all of that. Now, you might be like, wow, how did Grandmaster see so much? It's actually pretty easy for us when it's checks and captures. If it's a move that's not a check or a capture and our opponent has lots and lots of legal moves, then we miss stuff. But when there's only one legal move or two legal moves, then we're pretty good at that. So here, he forces the queen to e5, and then he plays queen h8 check, skewering the king and queen, forcing him to take the queen, and then the winning fork. An amazing endgame from Petrosian, all computer approved. And this was played 30, 35 years before chess computers were any good. There were no chess computers when this game was played. So that was an amazing game, an amazing sacrifice, and that's what you expect from a world champion. And that guy wasn't considered an exciting world champion. But if you see checks and captures and forks and skewers, maybe one day you'll be the world champion too. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold, here for Kid Chess. Until next time, bye, kids.